his article.
Final arguments.
All right. Well, basically, in a nutshell, as far as final arguments go, okay. Oswald, I've already shown you guys that Oswald was able to leave the depository and be in and out of the rooming house by 1 o'clock. He arrives there at 12:57, 12:58, maybe 12:59. He's back there just long enough to grab a jacket, and he's gone. The witnesses at the scene positively identify Oswald, and that would be Helen Markham, William Scoggins, Barbara Davis, Virginia Davis, Sam Ginyard, Ted Calloway, the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company guys, Harold Russell, Pat Patterson, Warren Reynolds, and also Mary Brock. She has him walking behind the Texaco station 1 block away with a jacket on, where a jacket was later found under a car. So the witnesses at the scene positively identify Lee Oswald. The shells found at the scene are linked to the exclusion of any other revolver in the world to the revolver that Oswald had in his possession when he was arrested. The big one for me is, why did Oswald get rid of his jacket between the rooming house and the shoe store? If Oswald did not even go to 10th and Patton, and if he never went behind the Texaco station, forget 10th and Patton, forget the murder of Tippit, forget the jacket found under the ground, under the car on the ground behind the Texaco station, why did Oswald ditch the jacket that he was seen zipping up as he went out the door of the rooming house by the time he was seen by Johnny Brewer on Jefferson Boulevard? And something else I wanted to say. So, Matt has made arguments like, oh my gosh, like a jealous husband walking on a sidewalk in the neighborhood he lived in. No, this is my closing argument. You gotta let me go. So Matt was making an argument about a jealous husband, possibly a jealous husband walking on a sidewalk. Matt says, because he lived in the neighborhood, but truth be known, it was 36 blocks away. And then Matt even later said it was 15 blocks away. Either way, it's not in the neighborhood. Why would a jealous husband be walking on a sidewalk? It's pointless. And all these arguments by Matt have been on the same lines. Bob Barrett, Matt insisted that Bob Barrett never went to Westbrook's office, and there's no evidence of it, and that I was going to embarrass myself by saying such a thing. And I showed Matt where Bob Barrett specifically stated in 1975 that he went to Westbrook's office to assist with the arrest report. All right. This is pretty early on because the arrest report was not typed up yet. So, and one important thing I do want to mention, I didn't get to this earlier. So Robert Oswald told a story. He and Lee, this is when Lee was back from Russia. And this is about a year before the assassination. So sometime like in late 62, he and Lee are driving. Robert's driving, Lee's in the passenger seat. Robert has a yellow light up ahead of him, and he decides to go ahead and run through the yellow light. Well, the light turned red before he could pass through. So a police officer saw this, pulled him over for running a red light. The officer walks up, talks to Robert Oswald, and Robert Oswald said, well, the guy behind me, if I would have stopped at this yellow light, the guy behind me would have hit me. So I figured it best to go ahead and go through the intersection. This didn't matter to the police officer, and he gave Robert Oswald a citation for running a red light. Well, Robert Oswald said that as they were pulling away after he got his ticket, the police officer walked back to his patrol car. Robert Oswald said as they were pulling away, he said that Lee looked over his shoulder and kind of mumbled to himself, "Dumb cop." Now, that doesn't prove anything, but I think it's important. And I think it's important because William Scoggins was sitting in his cab at the corner of 10th and Patton eating his lunch. He heard the shots. He gets out of his cab. The gunman is running straight towards him because he's right there at the corner. He tries to cross the street, look for a place to hide, couldn't find a place to hide, and figured his best bet was to go back to the cab. So he's ducking behind the cab, looking over the back trunk as Oswald cuts the corner and starts to go south on Patton. Scoggins identified the man as Oswald, and he said that Oswald mumbled to himself, "Poor damn cop," or "Poor dumb cop." Scoggins wasn't sure which statement that Oswald said, but it was either "poor damn cop" or "poor dumb cop." And Scoggins said that Oswald uttered it twice. Okay. So again, this doesn't prove that Oswald is a cop killer, but I think it's important to note that this whole dumb cop comment that Robert Oswald said Lee made, almost an entire year before. The bottom line is the J.D. Tippit was murdered on November 22nd, 1963 at about 1:15. The witnesses tell you it was Oswald. The ballistics tell you it was Oswald. And why did Oswald get rid of his jacket? If he wasn't trying to change his appearance because he just killed a cop, why is he getting rid of his jacket between the rooming house and the shoe store? I go with the evidence. Matt wants to talk about could have, would have, and should have, and all that stuff. I'm just talking about the evidence. Matt, if you listen to this debate, is not talking about the physical evidence at all. And why isn't he? Because, and Matt's going to have his closing argument here in just a second. If Matt wants to add one more thing, I would love to hear in his closing argument one piece of physical evidence that points somewhere besides Oswald. I would love to know what this one piece would be, because there's not one piece of physical evidence that I've ever seen in the murder of J.D. Tippit or the assassination of the president that points to anybody besides Lee Harvey Oswald. Not one single piece of physical evidence. And I challenge Matt to list one piece of physical evidence that points to someone besides Lee Harvey Oswald when Matt makes his closing arguments, which I'm finished now.
Matt, you done? Okay.
Done.
So just to respond really quickly, just before I give my closing argument, he said, again, if you go back and listen, we already talked about the jacket and Johnny Brewer, and we already exhausted that. So he brought that up. I don't have an answer. I gave an answer. He said, I say could, would, should have. No, I only say could, would, should have on things we don't know. Like, why was Tippit acting panicky and all that. Everything else I cited as original evidence. He said he basically said I fell on my face, basically, because the whole Bob Barrett thing and Westbrook and all this. So turns out you read me something I did not know before about when he testified, Bob Barrett. So it turns out I'm not right. And guess what? Bill's not right. So now we have a split. Bill's quote of Bob Barrett is saying that he went to Westbrook's office. And then my quote and then the second quote, and a different quote, is Bob Barrett saying, I never talked with him except for the Tippit scene. So what we have is a split. So I know it kind of made me sound bad earlier, but what we have is a split. We don't know which one's true. You said you accused me of not talking about the physical evidence. All right, well, that's because we already had a debate last year where we did talk about the physical evidence. So nice try. It doesn't work. You said point to one piece of evidence that shows other than Oswald. I'll get to that in my closing argument. I think you already know what it is. Oh, you brought up Robert Oswald. I find it very sad how just 3 days after the assassination, Robert Oswald is already convinced that he's already bashing his kid brother before any facts have come out. I mean, he says this is CD 87, page 171. This is an interview. He said, I have no doubt in my mind that the death of the officer was done by my brother and all that stuff. So no. This just a few days after the assassination, just 3 days, and he's already bashing his brother. Well, he was very jealous of his brother, and we all know that. And so why he would, be bashing him and trying to bring him down just 3 days before any facts have come out is insane. But anyway, let's see. I think that's all I want to respond to there. Okay. Here's my closing argument. Okay. Closing argument. Okay. So, in short, to sum up everything up as simple as I can, according to the Warner Report, Oswald left his house at 1:04, walked east 12 minutes, 1 mile, and killed Tippit at 1:16. But they left out Mrs. Roberts saying she saw him at the bus stop, quote, several minutes after he left. They also left out that 1:16 is actually when the police were notified, and that the shooting really happened a few minutes before that. Not only that, all the witnesses said the man was actually walking west 16 minutes, not east, which, as I said, would have been 12 minutes. So if we adjust everything, Oswald is seen at the bus stop at 1:06, and Tippit is killed at 1:14. 8 minutes to walk 1 mile? No way. By the time Oswald gets there, 1:22, Tippit is already at the hospital. Okay, the police report says they only had 1 bullet. It was tested and didn't match to Oswald's revolver. The shells didn't appear for 6 days, and the remaining 3 bullets, a quarter of a year. The shells could not be matched with the bullets. The bullets could not be linked with the revolver. Officer Poe affirmed he marked the first 2 shells. His initials disappeared. Sergeant Barnes testified he marked the first 2 shells. His initials disappeared. The FBI belatedly claimed that Captain George Doty marked the 3rd shell. A cursive capital G is in fact on the shell today, but the problem is we don't know when he allegedly marked it. Who knows? He may have marked it later. We just don't know. It's all just a bunch of hearsay. Moving on, Detective Brown testified he and Detective Doherty marked the 4th shell. Their initials disappeared, and the shells could not be identified by the 3 witnesses as the ones they found that day. You can't make this up, folks. It's super obvious. The shells were switched. Who ID'd Oswald? William Lawrence Smith? Yes. Kenneth? No. Austin? No. Frank Wright? No. Bert? No. I'm stuttering. You can cut this out, Chris. Bert? No. I'm stuttering. You can take this out, right, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, man.
Okay. Bert? No. I can't get the word out. I can't get the word out. I'm sorry, guys. I can't get the word out.
It's all right. Take your time.
William Arthur Smith? No. Higgins? No. Donnie Benavides? No. Fuck, I knew I'd get stuck on this one. You have no idea how hard it is not being able to get a word out, guys. Benavides? No. Barbara Davis? Yes. I'm so embarrassed. I'm sorry, guys. Fuck. Bill, you there?
Yeah.
I'm so embarrassing. I'm
Sorry. Just relax. No biggie.
Okay. Fuck. I can't get the fucking word out. Donnie Benavides? No. Barbara Davis? Yes. Oh my God. Virginia Davis? Yes. Scoggins? No. Markham? No. Mrs. Clemens? No. Sam Ginyard? Yes. Calloway? Yes. Reynolds? No. Russell? Yes. Patterson? Yes. Lewis? No. Robert Brock? No. Mary Brock? Yes. So that's 13 no's and 8 yeses. But those yeses were based on rigged lineups and showing Oswald's photo months after he was dead and nationally known. So actually, there's no one who can legitimately say it was Oswald. Here's a paradox. Here's a paradox. He left his house wearing a dark jacket. The killer wore a light jacket. A white jacket was found, yet what's in evidence is a gray jacket. Hey, that's JFK for you. And finally, you asked for a piece of evidence that points away from Oswald. Finally, the killer put his hands on Tippit's car. Fingerprints were lifted, and they did not match Oswald. Bill's whole argument is Oswald killed Tippit, the witnesses ID'd him, and the shells match his gun. To which I simply say, you mean the unfair lineups and the shells that didn't appear for 6 days? I mean, that's the quickest way I can sum it all up. In closing, as Larry Harris said a few years before he died, quote, I, Larry Harris, think that anyone who studies the evidence objectively and in its entirety will come away disturbed by what they find, because there's a lot of indications that Oswald was not the Tippit killer, that he was nowhere near there. In closing, it's unfortunate that the Tippit murder has been virtually regulated to footnote status in history. Because the Tippit murder, at that time and even now, is depicted as virtually an open and shut case against Oswald. But I think if you'll read up and slowly study the record, you'll find that the Warren Commission's findings leave a lot to be desired, and that there's a lot about the Tippit murder we don't know. It seems at this late date, we may never be able to resolve the Tippit murder. It seems, at this point at least, that it seems destined to remain the other unsolved murder on November 22nd.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on. I enjoyed
Hey, Chris,
it.
before we say our goodbyes, and this is nothing, no more debating. I just want to say that everybody out there listening, if you're not a member, and I'm sure Matt wants to mention his as well, and he should, but anybody out there listening, if you're not a member of JFK Truth Be Told, which is our Facebook group, we discuss the Kennedy assassination and the J.D. Tippit murder, then simply find the group on Facebook and send a request, and you'll be accepted. JFK Truth Be Told. And the second thing I want to say is, if anybody out there is listening, I'm guessing here we're about almost 5 hours in, and if you've listened to this entire thing, then you definitely should go read With Malice by Dale Myers, because if you're interested enough in the Tippit case that you've listened this far and you've never read With Malice, then it's highly recommended. Any reasonable person, and that's the key word there, any reasonable person who reads With Malice is left to conclude that Oswald and Oswald alone murdered J.D. Tippit. It's the best book on the case, hands down. Nothing else compares. Highly recommended. And if you've listened to our debate today this long, you got to go check out With Malice.
Matt, would you like to mention your group?
Wow. No, I said what I need to say. I'm not going to make any promotions or anything. I'm done.
All right, fellas. Thank y'all very much. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Chris.